All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am so excited for our guest today. I've got Scott Couchenour here today from Serving Strong Enterprises. Scott, thanks for being here today.
It's an honor to be here with you, Damon.
Yeah, it's great because we're going to be talking today about the keys to creating your dream business exit and legacy. And
hmm
wow, am I honored to have you to talk about this today because you've lived some tough times, worked through seen legacy, helped people do this. It's going to be so great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, Scott, as we like to start out the show, we always want to understand more about our guests and what really brought you to doing what you're doing today.
hmm Yeah. Well, I'm five. I'm one of five kids, and my dad, back in the mid '60s, his dad was a pastor going through a building program, and the contractor had inflated the final invoice and skipped town. So Dad stepped in to help Grandpa finish the project, and someone said there ought to be a company exist to see this never happens to churches again. So Dad helped another church and another church, and before long, he incorporated in 1970. And I was at that time I would have been five. I joined when I was 24.
Mm-hmm.
Became COO, and I was COO for about 24 years. And along that line, I was exposed to life coaching, and we were going to offer that as a benefit to our employees. And we designed and built churches across America. So it was beginning to flourish. We had about 70 employees at one point. We were doing 40, 45 million. And someone said, let's look into life coaching for our employees. And since I was the youngest of four brothers, I was tasked with the responsibility. Not that I didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it. So I hired my own coach, got certified as a coach, and I had that on the side. Never felt like I needed to. I felt it never felt released to do coaching full time. So I
Mm-hmm.
just did that on the side. Then 2008 happened. I'm sure your listeners will remember that with fondness. We those were good times when the stock market went down quite a bit. Our company then suffered 5 years of a slide in sales, and we could not figure out what was going on. So in 2013, the board of directors had asked me to become CEO to reinvent this 40-year-old company. And I did. I filled whiteboards, with all kinds of thoughts, and after dozens of whiteboards, an idea began to germinate. And the remaining employees and I started to get some excitement, some hope about this
Yeah.
new way of doing things. But the 5 year slide from 2008 to 13 made us vulnerable to one project that had to start in June of 2015 so we could bridge from a cash flow standpoint, bridge ourselves so we can get to the 20 million that we had in design. Various projects at different stages in design. And so I get the call from the project manager in June of 2015, expecting him to say, we got started. Instead, he said, are you sitting down? I said, why? He said, apparently the pastor has been having an affair with the secretary, and that has become public, which was the end of our family business. We could not sustain any further. And so I did the only natural thing, and that was to close the business after 44 years. We had designed and built 760 churches in that time.
Wow.
It was a great run. But that my wife and I were both employed at the time. So at that moment, we became we had no income. My career was gone after almost 30 years. And with it went my identity, because over the years I fell victim to this, what we all kind of generally do, and that is we attach our identity to what we do. So we're in a room networking with people and they say, what do you do for a living? Or what is it that you do? And it's an innocent question, but it's really, you think, I'm a CEO of a
Mm-hmm.
multi-million dollar family business that designs and built churches. Oh, that's cool. That was all gone, and with it was my identity. So after several years and a lot of anguish trying to figure out who I am and what I want to do, um, there there began to emerge this idea, and I'm a praying man. I grew up in the church. My dad's a preacher's kid. I married a preacher's kid, and through a lot of prayer, a lot of reflection and advice from counselor, a lot of people giving me good counsel, realized that I was sitting on a wealth of experience
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of capability. So I began to think about what was it that I went through and why did it take so long? That then began to what began to emerge was a strategic planning process.
Yeah.
Regain my identity. It was a survival for me. Then I thought to thinking, I think I could be the partner I wish I had had when that happened. Because if I had, I'm convinced I would not have gone as deep as I did in the fog, and nor would it have taken as long for me to recover. So I began to parallel strategic planning and execution, strategic initiatives, all that's part of business, and started thinking about that from a personal level. Why can't we see strategic planning and execution for our lives? And so that's what I'm doing today. I'm working with business owners who are at various stages in their exit. And I think there's a lot of good work that's being done on the business and getting it ready to sell, or to succeed if there's a multi
Mm-hmm.
generational family. But very little is being done with the inside the owner himself or herself.
Mm-hmm.
What are the emotions that they go through? And I address that directly because I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that experience, when you went through that, what do you think were some of the, you're sitting here, you close the company down, you said it took you several years to do it. What are some of the real life-changing discoveries about yourself that happened during that time?
Well, the most fundamental thing was I was living by default. And what I mean by that is, life has its ups and downs. Usually they say there are two things you can count on: death and taxes. Well, I would add a third, and that is the ups and downs of life. They will happen regardless, right? No, it doesn't matter if you're strategic or not. You're going to have ups and downs. There are going to be good
Mhm.
things that happen and bad things. Um, I discovered looking back on that experience just how default I was. I was I was riding the ups and downs as they occurred, and it's just it's what we naturally do. We don't really think about where am I really headed. We just enjoy the good times, and we somehow make it through the bad times. And that's a life by default. What I mean by that, in contrast, is a life by design, where you are working on something bigger. And it's a long run, and think of an arrow up above the ups and downs of life. That arrow with the ups and downs of the arrow. If I had been living by design at the time that we were facing these challenges, I would have had a broader context within which to process everything that was going on. And and that's the fundamental thing I noticed about myself. Um, after oh man, after about 6 or 9 months from the date that we closed the business, I began to then act on panic.
Yeah.
I made poor choices because I was panicked trying to get a business going.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Um, 10 years ago, when I was CEO or COO, if someone had said, "You're going to be in business for yourself one day," I'd have laughed them off the face of the earth because that I was content for years, for decades. I was the second chair, and
Yeah.
it was a badge of honor to me to make the person in the first chair successful.
Yeah.
That to me was success. Now here I am. I'm the guy running my own business, and I was operating under panic, which is non-strategic, right?
Mhm.
I so it wasn't until after a while I began to, well, actually 5 years after we closed the business, my wife, who had received another job shortly after, in order to pay for our health insurance and all that sort of thing,
Mhm.
she came up to me in 2020 and said, "Do you know it's been this is my 5th year anniversary at this new job?" And that, Damon, that hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my word, I can't believe how fast this time has been going. And I looked back at that 5 years, and it was like arrhythmia. I was not going anywhere. I was just playing. I talk about having the laptop on the left side of my desk, and I'm working on my website and building my business. And on the right side of my desk is my iPhone with the Indeed app, looking for, who could I work for, right? So I'm
Yeah.
going over
Yeah.
1099 W2, 1099 W2. I was riding the fence.
Yeah.
But when she said it's been 5 years, I thought, I have got to make this happen. So that's when I got really serious. Shortly after that, I hired a branding coach, and we really got serious about this, which is, um, coming out of that, I discovered, maybe I'm meant to address the Gen X generation, of which I'm barely a part,
Yeah.
born in 1965, which then that was the stepping stone to what I'm doing now. And as I'm a fourth quarter strategic coach.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not without its ups and downs. The best way to describe this life is like the Dow Jones Industrial Graph of 1900 to today. Um, if you zoomed in on any one day, that you could either be wildly elated or very depressed. But if you step
Mhm.
back, it trends upward, right? That's the journey I'm on now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It
Yeah.
is a fantastic journey right now.
Well, it's okay. Awesome stuff. And thanks for sharing that. Cause man, I just that first of all, seeing a family business having to go out of business like that is super tough on the family. And just you look back and those kind of things. But as you emerge from it, the things that you learned, I think, are so valuable though as well. Like you said, you were living by default. You were just rolling with the punches as they came up, down, and just working them through. But I loved what you said right after that. You learned how to live life by design.
Mhm.
And if there's anything that I discovered later in life is a lot of the same. It's right. I think you see some people that find this out earlier that
Mhm.
realize that, listen, I just have to have a higher overarching direction. Like you said, I'm going here, but you have to
Yeah,
decide that early. You have to commit to it.
right.
And then you even tied it in after, which is so great. It's going to be like the stock market where you're going to see bull days and bear days. But
Exactly.
overall, if you stick with it and keep getting better, it will continue to grow if you do that.
That
And
is the journey, right.
it is. And so many people live by default and just think that's the life that they've been given.
Mhm. And the ramifications of a life by default is that you pile up regret. I think it was Robert Louis Stevenson who said, in the end, something like this, in the end, we all sit down to a banquet of consequences. And I think that, I look back and there are regrets that I have to live with now
Yeah.
because of living by default. But life by design, you can start living by design anytime.
Yes.
And the sooner you do, the better. And what you do when you live by design is you slow the growth rate of regret, so that you can look back on a life and more likely say, I am so glad that and then fill in the blank, as opposed to, I wish I had fill in the blank.
Yeah. That's incredible what you just said. Slow the growth rate of regret. That
Mhm.
is awesome, man. Because that
Mhm.
there's so many people that run around today supposedly successful by the measures of the world, and they're building that regret every day. they're
Right.
they're they're missing out on what they really want to do. They're missing out on family. They're giving up on friends. They're loved ones don't support people the way they really would want to, and that
Right.
regret just keeps building. And and living by design, as you say, that can change all that.
It can. Not only does it slow the growth rate of regret, but it increases fulfillment in today. Because here's the thing about living by design, as you go through these ups and downs, which don't stop because you're living by design,
Yes.
every up and every down, every opportunity and every threat is fuel for your design. So you're going through something, okay, go through it. You don't pretend that you're not a human being, but let's say someone close to you passes and it was unexpected. You're going to go through a very difficult time. At some point you're going to say, okay, what is this telling me about my design and where I'm headed and what I'm trying to do and trying to accomplish for my life from a legacy standpoint? What have I learned about this experience, and how can I parlay that information, that knowledge, to make me to create an increase in where I'm headed and move the needle on where I want to go in the broader perspective. So I think a lot of times we lose our agency. And what I mean by that is when we feel controlled by circumstances, or we feel controlled by other people's decisions, we have lost our agency. That's what I did. I lost my agency. And it's not a good thing to make deep decisions when you don't have agency. I did that. I made decisions out of panic, out of discouragement or disappointment, rather than strategic
Mhm.
decisions. The best way to regain your agency is to step back and download everything and step back from the details. Um, because here's the thing, everything we face has context. Every single thing that you face, no matter how good or bad it is, there's always context surrounding that. But when you're living by default, you choose to live in the box, in the metaphorical box, while you're in the middle of the Grand Canyon. You think all there is this box around me. But when you can get out of that box and say, this box is so small compared to the context that is so much broader and deeper than what I'm facing right now, that gives you your agency. When you step back far enough from anything you're facing, you begin to see options. Those options give you choice. And my definition of agency is options plus choice. You may not like the choices that you
Yep.
have or the options, but at least you have choice. And that is agency. And when you're living by design, you can regain that agency much quicker because you've got a bigger program that you're working on,
Yeah.
regardless of what's happening today.
Yeah. This is awesome. That's awesome. I just say thank you for sharing this. We got Splendor. He dropped a comment in here. It said it's a longer one, but he says, you're right. I learned a lot of these this year. No matter how successful a business is, challenges are inevitable, including financial strains, regulatory hurdles, and market volatility. This underscores the importance of resilience and strategic planning. Life shouldn't be lived by default, living by design. Anticipating and preparing for potential problems helps navigate obstacles and achieve lasting success. And we all learn from our mistakes. And yeah, that's very true. And when we talk about living by design, to me, and I want to ask you a question about this, it means that we're not necessarily looking at where we're at today, but the bigger of what is our legacy or impact of our life when I think about that. So
Mhm.
explain to me what your definition of that is so I can better understand that, because that really, it appeals to me because I see this bigger picture for us, for our careers, for our lives, for our families, whatever it is we're talking about. What is living by design really? And that you mentioned that arrow that kind of flies above everything.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll encapsulate it with a phrase and then get into a little bit more detail. The meta theme of a life by design, in my opinion, my definition is being in the act of becoming the fullest expression of your unique God-given design. when you're in the act of becoming the fullest expression of your unique God-given design, two things happen. Today's fulfillment goes up, tomorrow's regrets go down. That comes out of what I learned about the loss of my identity. What I discovered about identity and career is that your identity is, and your career is the expression of that identity, which means I can change careers. I can even lose my career, but it's separate from my identity. It's kind of like saying, I am afraid, which is an identity statement, versus there's the fear, which is a life by design phrase. There's the fear. So you imagine being on top. We talk about on top and underneath. When we're sick, we're under the weather. When we are feeling great, we are on top of the world. See, under, on top. You can be under the circumstances. I'm okay under the circumstances, right? Who wants to live under the circumstances?
Yeah.
But if you can be on top of the world, what that means is you can experience fear. You can experience a loss of career or a shift or an exit of your business and say, there's the exit. There's the career I used to have. I'm still me. I'm still who I am. So to answer your question, living by design, the meta theme is being in the act of becoming the fullest expression of our unique God-given design. How that plays out, I've got a 6-point framework that allows for my clients to do assessment and also establish aspirational statements for how they want to be. And those 6 are being spiritually anchored, physically fit, relationally rich, emotionally healthy, vocationally aligned, and financially free. So if I can identify what is ideal in all 6 of those hallmarks, I call them hallmarks of a fantastic fourth quarter, then I can bounce anything I face against those 6. For example, if I got a diagnosis, my mother let's say she got a diagnosis of dementia, and I'm trying to wrestle with that, I can look at that event, which is a setback in life, and look at it and say, what is that doing to my spiritual anchored hallmark? How is this going to impact my physical fitness, my relational richness, my emotional health, my vocational alignment, and my financial freedom? All of which elevates you above that diagnosis so that you can think more strategically about that situation. Certainly, we are emotional beings. We are human.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, oh, I got a diagnosis. Okay, well, let's go up to the top and look at it from it. It's not that clean.
Yeah.
But you are more likely to get back on top of things quicker in a life by design versus life by default.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because it doesn't mean that we're not still going to struggle through things. It's just there's a way to work through them to get back faster.
Right.
And that's a great. The one thing that I had a few questions written down here, because I think what you are doing, helping people get through this, is so interesting, and you talk about the fourth quarter of a career, the fourth quarter coaching that you're doing. What are some of the things that you see people, and today we're talking about keys to creating your dream business, exit, and legacy. And we all know that far too many people have the opposite. They either hate when they leave could be through a situation like yours. They don't want to be going, or they exit and maybe they've got money, but they don't have the legacy or the satisfaction they want. So what are some of the things that you talk with people about, or really see them thinking about, that allows them to make this transition? I mean, you talked about one that I think is critical in there, is in that your career is just the expression, but it
Mhm.
is separate from your identity. It's expression of your
Mhm.
identity, but it's separate from your identity. But that really help people get past the fact that I'm moving on to something else. And you wrote something that was called said the personal something in personal life to run to. I read that you had written where you got something in life to run to. I mean,
Right.
let's talk about that because I see this happen once in a blue moon where somebody actually exits a business and they've taken enough time personally to really go, I am excited about this because
Mhm.
of what is next.
Right.
Most people, as you talked about before we got on today, don't know what the heck they're going to do Monday.
Right. Right.
Let's
They have
talk about
nothing to
that a
run
little
to.
bit.
Sure. And I will give you a little bit of, I'll give you a story first.
Yeah.
I'm working with a client and we're talking about his exit.
Yep.
And he said, I've got a friend who came to me. He said, he invented this, let's say, to keep it this person anonymous, he invented a thing that became very valuable to somebody to such a degree that this somebody came to his office, laid a blank check on his desk, and said, "You fill in the amount, and that's what I will buy this business for." Which he did. I mean, that was a total windfall, right?
Mhm.
More money than he'd ever dreamed, right? My client is conveying this story, and he said, "This guy 3 years later came into my office and said, 'Can I buy your business? I have nothing to do. I don't know what to do with myself. I've got all this money.'" The guy gave me a blank check and I put as many zeros on there as I could and I got the money, but 3 years later, I don't have purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do. So, I think that there's a lot of attention, and rightly so, on getting the cash flow and the standard operating procedures in place and taking care of the financials and how they look so that the sellers can have so that you can get the most multiple from your
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you can't ignore that. You can't just say, "Hey, I'm
Yeah.
selling my business," and so the stuff you do is very valuable. At the same time, I've identified some things that we all kind of go through, and it's born from my experience. No one talks about the conflict that is associated with exit, especially in a family business scenario,
Yeah.
or there's a strong personality in the second chair, the CEO, where the owner's trying to exit, but the CEO is there's a contentious thing, or there's multiple owners on the board. So
Mhm.
conflict needs to be dealt with. There's also an emotional attachment that the owner has to this business. Think about it. If I if I started a business with my own blood, sweat, and tears 40 years ago, 45 years ago, and I brought on staff who are now like family to me,
Yes.
the whole concept of exiting is quite truly a grieving process.
Yes.
The word exit can mean termination, the end of something. So there's an emotional attachment that they have to process. There's also retirement anxiety. What
Mhm.
am I going to do? Who who who's going to need me when I'm done, when I exit this business? Then of course there's fear of regret. That's another one. Should we wait a year and maybe get more money out, right? You've probably dealt with that before.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's coming from regret and then of course loss of identity. I'm afraid of who I am if I'm not the owner of this business. All of those emotions, conflict, emotional attachment, they come from a lack of design, living by design. So what they're dealing with, those who suffer from those types of emotions, they're dealing with the moment, the whole process of exit, as though the exit in this business was equal. Like if their life was a circle, it was the biggest bubble inside that circle. And
Yes.
what I talk about is let's step back and get context. This business that you're exiting is a small part of a big life. And let's decide, what are you going to fill? What are you going to do with this time and this energy and all this wisdom and experience?
Hmm.
So I think that's what it's all about. That's life by design, going through an exit with a purpose.
Yeah.
And
I love that. I love that viewpoint because I can totally get and understand how a business owner, like you said, many, many decades of sweat, tears, agony, worrying about, are we going to make it, making it, doing well, all this. And what they miss in all of that is many of them then during this time are also raising families, seeing their families have families, seeing their employees have families, and they really don't realize that their life is much bigger than just the business part of it. And
yes,
they kind of, it gets combobulated together almost. And because they're at work or doing what they're doing with the business a lot, they don't really realize the contributions that they make without even realizing it, that are outside the business, the people contributions.
yes,
And
the
that's a
bigger
great,
picture.
I hadn't thought about it like that before, but that the business, yes, it's a part. Yes, it's something that you've done. Yes, it's part of that, but nothing like your overall life.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I would like to introduce the concept along with exit is a commencement strategy or a graduation strategy. We always talk about when our kids or when we
Yeah.
graduated from high school or graduated from college, it was the sense that there was an end, right? But look at the words. Look at the word commencement. That's a beginning, or
Yes.
graduation. You're going to a different level. So I like to add the words commencement or graduation to the word exit, because exit, there's so much more to exit. And I think what my dream is to eliminate life by default as a standard way of living and introduce life by design, so that um, maybe you're going to exit this business and you're going to start another one in your 60s or 50s, and you exit that one and you start something else. Or the hallmark having to do with vocational alignment.
Hmm.
When I think of vocation, I don't necessarily mean the job that you're doing for a paycheck. um, it's whatever you give your time and your attention and
Yes.
your energy toward. And I've seen people who will exit a business and then start a foundation
Yes.
based on what something. I was talking with someone the other day, and one of their grandchildren was diagnosed with cancer, a real rare cancer at 2 years old.
Hmm.
And so they're exiting their business and they're thinking, what am I going to do? Let's start an effort to fund the research for childhood cancer.
Yeah.
That's an expression of who he is.
Yes.
That's an expression of his identity. And it's something he can run to, something he can get involved in and give his time and energy and attention to.
Hmm. And it's so great that you're bringing this up, because so many times people think that an exit means that I'm going to get a pile of money and then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. And it's almost like, how many lottery winners are really happy? They're not,
Right.
right?
Right.
But when you put something out ahead of you that is, this is what I want to do, you want that exit. I mean, explain it so well today. I've tried to explain it many different ways. To me, it should be a wonderful party. And I always, there's a picture that I use in presentations a lot. It's about a NASCAR winner. And I think
Hmm.
that's, doing the burnouts, having a good time, waving the flag, man. It should be
Yep.
like that for that owner, because today I've won, and I'm going to get back in the car. Might be a different car, might be a different track tomorrow, but I got something else I'm going to do.
A different race, right?
Different race. And,
Yeah.
because it's not the end, because most of the time these exits, what they really do, as you said, creating the legacy, of course, with the business and doing that, that's super important. Like you said, getting it, because, if you work that hard, you want to see it go on like you want it to go on.
Mhm.
But it positions them, when you look at your 6 pillars there that you talk about, that financial freedom allows them, as you said, I can go out and work on childhood cancer. I
Mhm.
can go out and I could open a startup lab where I just help people start up businesses, because I appreciated that when I got that help. I can mentor people. I can do whatever I want. And
Mhm.
but thinking about that, living by design, knowing where I'm going after this is done, also gives me the energy today to make some of the tough choices that I have to, that
Mhm.
might tell me, yeah, I kind of got to get out of that role. I've got to do some of these other things, because
Right.
what we see in the end is that conflict and anxiety and the fear of change
Mhm.
slows people down at the end and really prevents them from maximizing the return on their business as they exit, and them just having the enjoyment in the process.
Right. If I am wrestling with the loss of identity as I think about exiting a business and it's looming, it's coming and coming,
Yeah.
and I'm dragging my feet, um, but I want this business to succeed, and yet I'm dragging my feet. I'm actually colluding against myself. I'm actually creating the thing I don't want to create because I don't know who I'm going to be. If I knew I was going to see, this isn't just a life by design to say this is where I'm headed and what I'm going to do post exit. But if you're living life by design, you will look at the exit itself and do as much strategic thinking about the exit itself, so
Yes.
that you can, so you'll make demands of the buyer. Um and it's coming from a strategic mindset as opposed to I have no agency. This whole circumstance of exiting, I've got to do it because I know it's the right thing, but I'm not really in charge of this. I don't feel like I'm on top of things,
Hmm.
so it can not only help designing what you're going to do afterward, but you can be more in having more agency in the exit process and enjoy the exit process that much greater.
Yes. Yes. Because I've seen in professionals, I used to work with investor owners, and some were smaller groups where you had a few of the people that are owners, and some were actually owner operators. And when they would do it, it was so much different, because it was like, hey, we're growing to the value and we've gotten there. It's time for us to do this. And this is going to be a great celebration when we're done and we're going through this. And then when you see some founders that do that, it's completely different. But it can be just like that for anyone if there's that something else after that, like you said, living by design. There's something beyond this that's just graduating to and moving into that.
Right.
This is just the beginning of something else that's even more wonderful.
That's right. That's right. In fact, I would venture to say that if you're so excited about what you're going to do after, you won't be able to wait until this exit's over. I mean, it would be like, come on, let's get this thing done. I've got other things to do. Right.
Yeah. 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 And that's really, I mean, when you see that happen, it's just a thing of beauty. That's for
Mm.
sure. So as you are talking to people and helping them do this, what are some of the things that they talk to you about when the lights start to come on and they
Mm.
start to think about it and they go, wow, I just never realized, what are they saying when they, because I mean, it's gotta be pretty a big eye-opening experience for them.
I I've had many times when that's happened, and some of them they're in tears.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember one in particular who was talking about how he he awakened to the fact that this big thing that he was wrestling with. He had two family businesses, one run by his father, one he ran with, and he didn't care about the one his father was running, and they were trying to sell it, and it was going very poorly. It wasn't going well, and he was afraid that he would have to take over this business because it wasn't selling. And I remember the time in a session with him where he was saying, I discovered something. He said, I was thinking that dad's business was this big thing that was a part of me. But through our conversations, I realized that's a small part. I don't have to be worried so much about the family legacy, the name on that business, and I can let go of it. And I'm okay either way, how it plays out. And the freedom that he felt. Actually, what that did was that made him more strategic, and he was able to broker a deal to sell that business because he had the margin, where before he was just stressed completely out about it,
Mhm.
which paralyzed him, you know?
Yeah.
So when he saw it in perspective of a bigger picture, in other words, when he stepped back far enough, he saw options and choice.
Yes.
Then he was able to see the offers and the options that were available to him, took advantage of that, sold that part of the business off, had no problem, turned out great for the family. And but I remember that moment when he was under it and then he was on top of it, and
Wow.
the tremendous difference, that to me, that's what I get up in the morning hoping to see every day.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. That's incredible. Well, Scott, thanks so much for stopping by today because I really, really respect what you do. Uh, from where you
Thank you.
came from, living through what you did, and experiencing, with the family business, and then coming out and helping people now like you are in that time of transition to really help them understand that there's so much more than where they're at right now. That I love how you say it should be almost the exit graduation or commencement strategy because you're moving on to something better. But
That's right.
yeah, just thank you so much.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here to talk with you. It is also a pleasure to get to talk about this because, man, back in the day when I was going through that, it was like this is happening to us, and it's like the end.
Yeah.
Exit meaning terminal. What I've discovered now is every time I get the chance to talk about it, it's that a little bit more piece of release
Hmm.
and redemption. We talk about the fact that you can't have a resurrection if there's not a death that precedes it,
Yep.
right? And this is turning out to be a wild ride where experiencing a loss like this has turned into kind of a one to many,
Yeah.
being able to help multiple business owners design their life and not only go through exits successfully, but enjoy the process and move on to something else. I'm having a ball. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Scott, if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to find you?
Servingstrong.com.
Okay.
That's the main
Servingstrong
my
dot
website.
servingstrong.com. All right.
That's right. And if you search my name, you'll see me on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn, so
All right.
that's another one.
And then we'll reach out that way. Well, Scott, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate this and talking again about keys to create your dream business, exit, and legacy from someone who has been helping people, the owners of these businesses doing that. Now, let's be clear about you're helping the owners really turn this exit into a commencement or a graduation on to bigger and better and more fulfilling things for them, which I think is an incredible thing. Just thank you.
Damon, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I want to thank Splendor for being here today. And Iker, you dropped a comment in there too. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for all you people that were listening today that didn't drop a comment. If you came in later, go back to the beginning, listen to Scott talk from the beginning because his story is incredible, how he's helping founders really, really plan for their exit and see how they really are much bigger than the business, and how they can experience their exit to be a graduation almost, and the celebration that it really should be. Thanks everyone for being here. Hang out just for a minute, Scott, and we'll finish up.
All right.